Physiological psychology, also known as biopsychology, is a fascinating branch of psychology that examines the interrelationship between physiological structure and our behaviors, emotions, and mental processes. Are certain brain areas associated with certain feelings, thoughts, actions? What is happening at the microscopic level to explain such things as memory, depression, drug effects, etc.? How do our genes affect thought and behavior? The science of physiological psychology must separate fact from fiction. You may have heard that we only use 10% of our brain, for example. This is a wonderful thought. It suggests that we have so much more potential. But it's a myth. Even seemingly simple motor tasks, catching a ball for example, can require multiple areas of the brain to process and respond to such events. While it may be true that certain areas are more active during certain tasks, we don't seem to have large amounts of spare processing power or untapped potential. As we will see, however, the brain can be quite resilient to certain types of damage, reassigning healthy brain tissue to take over the activities of damaged tissue. And as we understand more about the physiological basis of attention and memory, researchers are examining whether these faculties might be improved through specialized drugs. Ask yourself this: if a drug was made freely available that would allow you to think more quickly and improve your memory, if it was legal, cheap, and had no known side effects, would you take it? What effect might such a drug have on society? Though such drugs don't exist yet, it seems likely that such cognitive enhancing drugs might be developed as scientists better understand the underlying physiology of mental processes. How does ethics keep pace with science? If we consider the intellectual giants, people such as Albert Einstein, was there something about the structure of their brains or the nature of their brain cells that provided a biological foundation for such genius? The story of Einstein's brain is an interesting one. At the time of his death, at age 76, Einstein's brain was no bigger or heavier than the brain of an average older male. His brain was removed, photographed, and cut up into 240 blocks that have since been divided up and distributed to scientists around the world for analysis. Based on photographs, some have argued that Einstein's brain was slightly bigger in an area of the brain called the parietal lobe, an area that seems to be more active in people that are good at math. But it's hard to really know whether this directly contributed to his genius. As we'll see during the course, researchers are interested in identifying brain areas that might be specialized for specific functions, whether those functions are related to movement, emotion, or intelligence. Researchers are also interested in whether differences in structure might predispose individuals to certain enhanced ability or mental disorder, or whether experience itself shapes the structure of the brain. Was Einstein's genius a consequence of having a different sort of brain, or did his thinking transform his brain? I want to read you a few sections from a book called The Language of Life by Deborah Niehoff. In order for cells to cooperate, they must communicate. As we explore physiological psychology, you'll see how such cellular communication is an integral part of human existence at the biological level. One of Earth's most primitive civilizations isn't hidden in the depths of a tropical rainforest or sequestered on a remote island. It has no artifacts to analyze, no traditions to document, no exotic rituals to preserve. It lives in pond scum, and its name is Volvox. Under the microscope, magnified 40-fold, Volvox resembles an olive-coloured golf ball, stamped with a handful of dark green spots. At higher magnifications, its dappled skin resolves into a mosaic of cells, embedded in a sphere of translucent jelly, the spots into clusters of daughter cells clinging like soap bubbles to the inner wall of the sphere. Volvox can swim and spin, propelled through the water by whip-like projections or flagella that sprout from each of its cells. In contrast to the independent lifestyles of unicellular organisms that biologists call protists, Volvox prefers to live in groups containing as many as 50,000. Volvox has adapted a social contract. Its cells have relinquished their autonomy and pledged lifelong commitment to each other. No longer capable of living alone, they die if separated from one another. Volvox is indivisible because it has opted for a division of labour. One type of cell, designated somatic, is responsible for infrastructure and transportation. These cells keep a roof over everyone's head, as well as build and operate the flagella that power the colony around the pond. Others, known as gonidia, have no flagella. Confined to the southern hemisphere of the cellular globe, they specialize in reproduction. Volvox is a collaboration, tens of thousands of cells forged into a whole functioning interdependently. The Oxford Dictionary definition of a society. Such teamwork is possible only because the members of Volvox have evolved one additional priceless faculty: language. By pooling resources and dividing the work, a human society can accomplish things that would be impossible for a single individual. Construct a city, feed the masses, maintain an army, build an empire. Cooperation and specialization also allow a cellular society, even one as simple as Volvox, to exploit natural resources and cope with emergencies in ways that are simply beyond the reach of a single cell. For example, because it has mastered the art of synchronized swimming, Volvox can glide quickly and efficiently to the choicest spot in the pond. And should the pond threaten to dry up in the summer heat, Volvox's discovery of sex and the marriage of specialized germ cells provide for the survival of the next generation, even if every last somatic cell dies. Cooperation requires conversation. Humans speak to one another. Sounds, scents, and postures connect members of animal societies. Volvox cannot talk, hiss, growl, trill, or show its teeth, but even the members of this simple cellular society have found a way to communicate. Strands of cytoplasm connecting its constituent cells transmit chemical substances that coordinate the beating of the flagella, while the somatic cells, unable to participate in sex, say the word that initiates it. Sensorium and sibyl, as well as transport coordinator, they read the signs: rising temperatures, less room to move, a subtle brackishness of the water, and predict the future. Before dehydration overtakes them, they warn their fecund sisters, producing and secreting a protein that diffuses in the surrounding water and triggers the sexual differentiation of the gonidia, the reproductive cells. The language of all cellular societies is similarly based, not on sounds or gestures, but on chemistry, using molecules where we would use words, constructing sentences from chains of proteins. The cells that make up the bodies of multicellular organisms inform, wheedle, command, exhort, reassure, nurture, criticize, and instruct each other. Their conversations direct every physiological function, report every newsworthy event, record every memory, heal every wound. Like our spoken and written language, which can be used to describe both the past and the present, or fact as well as fantasy, this chemical language is versatile, as useful for orchestrating the development of tissues and organs as issuing a request for more food. Like our language, it is flexible, permitting molecular words to be combined in more than one way, as well as accommodating, open to the addition of new words. Our language, aided by the postal service, the telephone, the fax machine and the internet, enables correspondents separated by long distances to communicate with one another. Similarly, diffusible chemical signals, relayed from sender to recipient via the bloodstream, or directed over long distances by cellular structures that are the equivalent of telecommunications networks, permit even distant cells to share information, so that a biological society, regardless of its size or complexity, can coordinate the activities and regulate the social behavior of its many members. Just as many social scientists consider language to be one of the seminal accomplishments of human society, biologists rank chemical communication as one of the most important advances in cellular societies, a skill essential to the evolution of the multicellular lifestyle. As you picture this colony of single-celled organisms working together toward a common goal of survival and reproduction, how different, really, is our own human body? Is it possible that we are simply a vast colony of specialized cells working together, individual cells having given up their autonomy to increase the chance of survival, of passing on their DNA? Like Volvox, we have a complex system of communication with neurotransmitters, hormones, and chemical messengers of the immune system. But surely we're not just biological automata, a bag of interdependent specialized cells. We are conscious beings. As René Descartes stated, "I think, therefore I am." But what is consciousness? How does consciousness emerge from this frenzy of biological processes? Scientists have yet to figure this one out. Indeed, it has been termed the hard problem of neuroscience. Our common sense view is that we have mental processes, thought, that somehow directs our actions, behavior. When we consider the brain, however, what does that really mean? As conscious beings, we consider that our thoughts direct our actions. We reach out to pick up a pen because we consciously will ourselves to do so. But what if the notion of free will is just an illusion? What if that sense of consciousness is simply a byproduct of the workings of the brain? Our everyday experience suggests that our will directs our actions. We're not discounting the involvement of the brain, but it follows in a natural sequence. We will something to happen, such as reaching out and picking up that pen, and our brain carries out those actions. Consider this. Imagine that I have a wireless remote control device that turns a light on and off. I tell my 5-year-old daughter that I have magical powers, that if I snap my fingers, I can turn the light on or off. Each time I snap my fingers, I secretly press the button on the remote control. But my daughter is not aware of this button pressing. All she witnesses is the light turning on or off after I snap my fingers. To her, this sequence of events produces an illusion of causality. Without fail, the light changes right after I snap my fingers, and there is no alternative explanation for what might cause this. In this diagram, the dotted blue line represents our common experience and understanding of free will. Thought directs our action. The decision to move triggers the movement. Imagine it is the brain itself that directly triggers the movement of the arm reaching out for a pen. Our conscious sensation of willing the movement is simply a byproduct of the brain activity. We become aware of this decision a fraction of a second before the movement is initiated. Remember, the only two things that we're aware of are the conscious decision and the subsequent movement. In the same way as the hidden remote switch, we're unaware of our brain's activity directly triggering the movement. All we experience are the decision and the resulting action. Thus we attribute the movement to that conscious experience in the same way the light coming on is attributed to the snapping of my fingers. Researchers have tried to demonstrate this by measuring the brain's activity while engaging in such tasks. They found that brain activity starts before one makes the conscious decision to move, supporting the idea that you're driven by your brain's activity and consciousness is simply an epiphenomenon of that activity. If this seems too far-fetched, remember that we engage in many activities without requiring conscious direction of those actions. There isn't time for a skilled tennis player to respond to a fast serve if he or she relies on conscious decision-making. It's processed at an unconscious level. When you eat popcorn at a movie theatre, are you consciously willing the movement of your hand, or does it happen without thought? As we start to consider these sorts of actions, the nature of unconscious processing of behavior seems more palatable to us. But as soon as we add in conscious awareness to the picture, we feel that it must be the driving force. So, is it possible that your notion of conscious free will is just an illusion? That you are driven by your brain's activity and consciousness is simply an epiphenomenon of that activity? Perhaps these are the sorts of questions that science will never fully be able to answer. Consciousness remains the hard problem